Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MLA's Meet the JMLA Editor-in-Chief Open Forum. Our JMLA Editor-in-Chief is Katherine Akers. Katherine has a diverse array of professional experiences in biomedical research, health science librarianship, and scientific editing. And prior to her appointment as JMLA Editor-in-Chief, Katherine served as the Interim Editor-in-Chief of JMLA. Katherine currently works as the Biomedical Research and Data Specialist and Coordinator of Researcher Support Services at Schiffman Medical Library at Wayne State University in Detroit. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of housekeeping items to mention before we get started. We have muted your phones and mics to alleviate any background noise. And for our Q&A, please use the Q&A panel for questions during the program, and send your questions to all panelists, which will appear in the Q&A drop-down menu. I think that covers everything. I'm pleased to turn this over to Katherine Akers, JMLA Editor-in-Chief.
Okay, great. Thank you, Martha. So I'm Katherine. You might wonder, where do I come from? Martha already gave me an introduction, but I'll kind of put that in my own words. I have served as interim editor of JMLA since last summer, and I was officially nominated or placed into the JMLA position in March of this year. So I've been doing this for over a year now. So I was originally trained as a researcher, a lab-based researcher. I have a PhD in psychology, and I did neuroscience research for a total of 10 years. And so during that time, I published a lot, and that's really where I've got a lot of my writing and publishing experience. I've written a lot of manuscripts. I've had them run through the ringer by peer reviewers. I've had them rejected, and doing this over and over and over, I've realized, I've learned what it takes to make a good manuscript and prepare a manuscript that can survive peer review, and develop a thick skin from receiving so much criticism. I grew tired, I grew burnt out, tired of doing research. I didn't want to keep doing that. I happily found academic librarianship as an alternative career path. I've been working in academic libraries for 5 or 6 years now. I've been working in a medical library for about 3 or 4 years now. I'm not a librarian in training, but I am a librarian in training. I'm currently in getting my master's in library and information science degree. So that's me, and let's go ahead. I'm going to go over what our agenda is. While I'm going through these slides, I'm actually going to turn the camera off so I don't have to be self-conscious, and then I'll turn the camera back on for the Q&A. So the agenda today is, I'm going to kind of give you a brief presentation and then hopefully spend most of our time today in a question and answer session. So first we're going to talk about the different types of articles that we publish at JMLA. I'm going to talk about what a typical peer review process is like, what our acceptance rate is. I'll give you a brief walk through the JMLA website, which is fairly new. We just switched publishing platforms recently, and we have launched a new website in January of 2017. I'm going to say a few words about our current development of a data policy that we'll be rolling out hopefully within the next year or so, and then question and answer. So what types of articles we publish? These are the article types that we have published in the recent future. If you go to our author guidelines page on our website, you will see these article categories. These are going to be changing soon, so I thought this would be a nice time, this open forum would be a nice time to announce these changes. So the changes have not been reflected on the journal website yet, but they hopefully will be in the next couple of weeks. What we are going to do is we are going to collapse the 3 different kind of categories of research articles, the papers, surveys and studies, and research communications. We're going to collapse those into a single category called original research. And these are going to be these are papers describing research using any type of quantitative or qualitative design or analysis method. So we're talking, I mean, we use a lot, we have a broad, in librarianship, we use so many different types of research methods. And at JMLA, we want to be inclusive of all of those methods. So we're talking surveys and focus groups, we're talking intervention studies, we're talking bibliometric analyses, content analysis, search filter development and testing, just really a broad array of research, both quantitative and qualitative. We are going to add a new type of article called a knowledge synthesis category, and these are going to be review articles of any types. I know in the this is going to be systematic reviews, scoping reviews, narrative reviews, any of the review types under the sun. We're going to keep case studies. Case studies are descriptions of the process of developing, implementing, or assessing a new service, program, or initiative, typically within only a single institution or through a single collaborative effort. These are really good. This is a really good option for practicing librarians. By which I mean librarians who spend all their time practicing and don't necessarily have time to do their own research on top of that. So what are we looking for in case study? We're not just looking for articles that just merely showcase a new initiative. We are looking for articles that provide an in-depth description of how they developed and implemented a new initiative to enable librarians and other institutions to do something similar. So a case study should contextualize the problem faced by an institution. It should describe the process by which a potential solution to that problem was developed and implemented. It should provide evidence, preferably objective evidence, for the success or failure of that initiative, and it should critically reflect upon your experience and explain how it advances our profession. So these three article types are all peer-reviewed. We are also going to keep commentaries. Again, this is great for practicing librarians. So commentary is simply just your viewpoint on a timely topic of interest to other health science librarians. So if you have a strong opinion about something, we would love to hear it. Write it up in a commentary. And then also letters to the editor. So these are brief comments on articles that were recently published in JMLA. So these 5 article types are the articles that are directly handled by myself or an assistant or associate editor. A question came up in the pre-open forum survey is what counts as prior publication? If I have presented a poster at a conference or given a talk at a conference, does that count as prior publication that precludes me writing that up as a manuscript and submitting it to a journal? No, conference presentations do not count as prior publication. So presenting your work at a conference is a great way to get some initial peer feedback and a very good first step toward writing up a manuscript and submitting it to a journal such as JMLA. So in addition to these, we also have several regular sections in JMLA, and each one of these is handled by one or more section editors who work almost completely independently of me. So we have tools and skills articles. So these are short articles that provide updates on new skills and techniques for health sciences librarians and information specialists. We have a section called History Matters, which are short articles on historical topics that are relevant to health science librarianship. We have book reviews, critical appraisals of new books relevant to health sciences librarianship, resource reviews, critical appraisals of new electronic resources and electronic tools of use to health science librarians and information specialists, and we have obituaries, which recognize a person who's made a major contribution to health sciences librarianship. So if you are interested in contributing to any of these sections, contact the specific section editor. I'm sure they would be delighted to hear from you. And when we look at the JMLA website, I can show you how to find the specific section editors. So the peer review process. There's a great number of potential routes that a manuscript can take as it travels along the peer review process, but I'm going to discuss the most common routes. So first off, you may want to send a pre-submission inquiry to me or to the section editor. If you want to contribute to one of those sections, you should definitely send a pre-submission inquiry to make sure that that you're writing about something. You just want, that you're writing about something that the section editor needs you to write about, or to make sure that your idea or your topic fits within their particular section. But if you're writing a research article or a case study or a commentary or something like that, or a review article, you don't need to send me a pre-submission inquiry. You can just go ahead and submit it. But you are welcome to inquire, to send me an email inquiring, would this fit in JMLA, or do you think this would be appropriate to submit to JMLA? And I would be happy to provide you feedback before you even submit. So you submit your manuscript using our online system, which is embedded in our website. Again, I'll show that to you in a second. And then what could happen, you don't want this to happen, but what could happen is I decline the submission immediately before even sending it out for peer review. This can happen because of a number of possible reasons. One is that the article could be completely out of scope. So I'm sure none of you would submit an article that's completely out of scope. But sometimes we have medical doctors who are submitting, articles about psoriasis, right? or people who are submitting articles, that would be more for a general library or a public librarian audience, and not for health science librarians and information specialists. Sometimes we receive manuscripts that are so poorly written, or the results are presented in such a garbled or incomplete fashion that it would be impossible even for peer reviewers to adequately review the manuscript. So those types of manuscripts might be declined immediately. Some of the manuscripts have pretty unambiguous critical errors in their methodology or their analysis. And if I can spot those and I don't really have any questions that those are critical errors, I might decline before I even send it out for review. But most of the time, if your article is in scope, it gets sent out to reviewers. I would send it out to send manuscripts out to at least 2 reviewers, sometimes 3, and sometimes even 4. But usually it'll be 2 or 3. So they usually take 3 to 4 weeks to read and write their review, read your manuscript, write their review. I get the reviews back, give me another week or 2 to digest their reviews, give your manuscript a closer read, and make a decision. And so sometimes the reviewers recommend, or sometimes the reviewers spot critical errors, or they strongly believe that the manuscript would not be of interest to the field or would not make a significant contribution to the profession, and so they recommend declining the manuscript. So sometimes your manuscript will be just, as soon as it comes back from peer review, we might decline it. We received a question in the pre-open forum survey, is if my manuscript is rejected, can I still revise it and resubmit, or is that door completely closed? And I would say that the door is not completely closed. You might want to rewrite your manuscript, take those reviews seriously into consideration, rewrite the manuscript, and then you can submit it as a brand new submission. And I would expect that the revised manuscript would look significantly different than it did before. So much so that I might not even recognize it as being the same manuscript, because it's been so heavily reworked. If you choose to do this, I suggest including a message to the editor in the online submission system saying, we previously submitted the manuscript with this title, but we have made significant revisions. Explain what you did. and then I can send that manuscript out to new reviewers. So not the same reviewers, but to new reviewers who can look at it with fresh eyes. So, well, what is the most likely scenario is the reviewers, make have some criticisms and make some suggestions for how the manuscript could be improved. I often add my own comments, so sometimes, I kind of add my own review to the manuscript. And then I will ask for a revised manuscript, as well as your point-by-point replies to the reviewer's comments and the editor's comments. So it gets, sent back, and then you have all the time that you need to revise. I don't place a deadline on when your revised manuscript has to be back. You just take the time you need to do that. So if relatively minor revisions were called for, I might not send the manuscript back to the reviewers. I might just take a look at it and make sure that you adequately addressed the reviewer's comments and made the necessary changes. And so we might end up in this kind of little loop where it goes, the manuscript, travels between me and the authors, and we might go through this loop a couple times until the manuscript looks good and ready to accept. At which point we accept, the manuscript gets sent on to copying and typesetting by our wonderful copy editor, and then it's published. So this would be a great path for your manuscript to take. If relatively major revisions are called for by the peer reviewers, again, you'll have your time to revise, and then when you submit your revised manuscript, I will send it back to the same reviewers to make sure that their concerns have been sufficiently alleviated. And then the reviews will write up new reviews to let me know how they feel about your revised manuscript. So again, here's another circle that we can kind of get stuck in for a little bit. Hopefully we don't go through this circle more than twice. It's really rare that we go through this more than twice. But it kind of gets stuck in this little loop as well. But eventually, hopefully, you will receive our decision to accept, and then eventually your manuscript will be published. So this scenario is theoretically possible. Your manuscript gets sent out for review. The reviewers say it's perfect. I read it, I say it's perfect, and we just say accept. No revisions necessary, let's just publish it. This never happens. This never ever happens. The reviewers are always going to have some suggestions. I'm always going to have some suggestions. So you should definitely expect to make at least minor revisions to your manuscript. So next, let's talk about our acceptance rate. So this is the data that I've been keeping since I became the interim editor. So this by month, right, from last summer to just last month. So the acceptance rate is the green bars, so this varies from month to month. Overall, I think it hovers around 50%. And so I should mention these are the manuscripts that I oversee. So these are the research articles, these are the review articles, the case studies, the commentaries. These do not count the book reviews or the resource reviews. Those are probably going to have a much higher acceptance rate because you're working directly with the section editors, and those tend to be more solicited submissions. So, considering that we still have a lot of manuscripts like the ones that have been submitted in the past year that are still under consideration, and probably most of those manuscripts will end up being accepted, I would say our acceptance rate is more or less right around 50%. What do we have next? Okay, so you might, you can always submit a manuscript to JMLA, but there are other ways for you to be involved with the journal. Perhaps you might be interested in becoming a peer reviewer for JMLA, and that would be great. We already have a very big pool of peer reviewers, and I want to expand that pool. I want to have a lot of people who are willing and able to review manuscripts for JMLA. So if you are interested in becoming involved and helping review manuscripts, pretty much ask yourself one question. Have you published one or more peer-reviewed articles yourself? Because I think that's the best education for peer reviewers, is having your own work reviewed and, receiving criticisms of your own work and having to respond to those criticisms. Having your work go through peer review is going to teach you how to be a good peer reviewer. So if you have not published anything, then now is probably not a good time to be a peer reviewer for JMLA. Just wait until you have more publishing experience under your belt. But if you have published one or more peer-reviewed articles in JMLA or in other journals, if you are familiar with the peer review process from the author's perspective, then go ahead and please do register on the JMLA website as a peer reviewer. I will show you in a second how to do that. When you register, I just want to ask you to provide a list of areas of your expertise. As many areas of expertise as you want to list and as detailed as you want to list them, that's great. That really helps me match you up with manuscripts that really fall in your wheelhouse. And then when I do send you a manuscript to review, be critical. Be critical. Don't be afraid to be critical. I feel like sometimes our peer reviewers tend to be a little nice, because they don't want to hurt the author's feelings, because it's hard to have your work criticized. But critical reviews are the most helpful to the authors and to the editor. But at the same time, by critical, I don't necessarily mean just negative. Like, you shouldn't just write a completely negative review. You want to be constructive. You want to balance your criticism, with being constructive. I read a quote an article that somebody wrote about how to be a good peer reviewer. I read a great quote that stuck with me. It's the easiest thing in the world to poke holes into something. It's usually much harder to suggest how to fix them. So don't just tear apart somebody's manuscript. Tear it apart and then suggest how to put it back together again. Suggest how an analysis can be run differently, or suggest other data that could be collected to answer a question that's currently unanswered in the analysis. So do your best to provide constructive comments too. This is the form that reviewers are asked to fill out when they review a manuscript. So it's very simple. The first question, I just want to get the reviewer's subjective opinion on whether the manuscript would be interesting to JMLA readers and or make an important contribution to the field. The second box, comments to the authors, whatever the reviewers want to say. So the bulk of their review goes into this box. And again, be critical, but at the same time, be constructive. There's also these two boxes. The first two boxes are these comments are passed on to the authors. This box is if you have confidential comments for me. If you have things that you want me to know about, but you don't necessarily want to say them to the authors. So this might be like your personal thoughts, your kind of more subjective, more personal thoughts or feelings about the manuscript. If you have any ethical concerns, with anything, with how you think that authors aren't reporting aren't doing their analyses correctly or reporting their data accurately, something like that. Any sort of concerns like that, it would be appropriate to include here. Sometimes I have reviewers put their really critical reviews in the confidential comments to the editor, and then put a similar review in the comments to the authors, but just kind of the nice translation of their criticisms, because again, they don't want to hurt the author's feelings. But that's just not very helpful to me or the authors. So I really want the bulk of the review to be in this comments to the authors box, and then save this one. And this is just optional. You don't have to give me any confidential comments, just if you have kind of more subjective or personal or sensitive kinds of concerns. Okay, and then I think, okay, before I get to that, I'm going to hop over. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the JMLA website. So, okay, hopefully you can see. Would somebody be able to tell me if they can see it, the JMLA website?
I can see it, Katherine.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is our new website. We launched this officially in January of this year. You'll notice that our October issue was just published yesterday. So go ahead and check that table of contents out if you haven't yet. So, you know, JMLA is an open access journal. Anyone can come here and read, download PDFs, or read the HTML, can come read all the articles. But if you want to submit a manuscript, or you want to register as a peer reviewer, you have to register with the site. And so that's right here. You would just hit register, complete your profile, and you can put your ORCID ID here if you have an ORCID ID. Down here, it asks you what you want to register as. And you can register as all three. You can register as just an author. You can do whatever you want. But when you register as an author, then you'll be able to, the site will let you submit manuscripts for consideration. And if you want to be in our reviewer pool, you can click that box. If you want to be a reviewer, please fill out this, complete this box, to identify your reviewing interests. So, it might be research data management, it might be collection development, it might be online instruction, it might be evidence-based practice, systematic reviews. Provide your areas of experience and your areas of expertise. If you're really good at designing surveys, put that in there. Like I said, as detailed and as many areas of expertise as you want to list, that's very, very helpful to me and the assistant editors when we're trying to match up manuscripts with good peer reviewers. Once you have registered, then you will be able to log in up here. I'll go ahead and log in just so you can see kind of what that looks like. And of course, I don't type in my password correctly. There we go. So you're not going to have as many roles as I do, but if you register as an author, you'll have this author. You'll have your author role. You can come over here to the right and click New Submission, and that is the first step to submitting a manuscript. I'm not going to walk through that though right now. And then if you register as a reviewer, and if you are assigned a manuscript to review, you will receive an email that contains the manuscript abstract, and so you can indicate if you and what the review due date would be, and so you can reply to that email and say whether or not you are willing to do a review. And then when you're assigned the review, you can come here and see, the link to One Active would be a link to the manuscript that you are reviewing, and a link to the review form that you would need to fill out. So I'll go ahead and you can edit your profile at any time if you change institutions, or if you want to update your reviewing interests, you can update your profile at any time. I'll go ahead and log out now. So most of the information about the journal as a potential author, you're going to want to find under About. Let's see, let's look at the editorial team so I can give you kind of a little bit more of a sense of what the structure of the people, who the people are behind this journal. So there's me, I have two assistant editors. These people help handle some manuscripts, so they help me edit and review some manuscripts and perform some administrative tasks. Here are our very capable section editors. So if you're interested in writing a book review or a resource review, come here, find out who you need to send an email to express your interest. And then we have our editorial board members. So these are mostly MLA members, but not all. These are in the past you became an editorial board member by kind of signing up, volunteering for an MLA committee. But that has recently changed now. Now when you renew, I hope I'm expressing this correctly, but when you renew your membership dues, you can provide your areas of expertise and interest. And so if you say that you are interested in or have expertise in publishing, for example, I will be able to see that, and I can pick up on that. And if I'm looking for new editorial board members, I can recruit that way. And some of these people are handpicked by me because they have expertise in particular areas and key areas of health science librarianship, or maybe they have just been consistently good peer reviewers, and I want them to be more on board. So these are people who, like I said, have expertise in key areas, like people who are really experts in search filter development, or people who have expertise in statistical analysis, or people who have expertise in systematic reviews. People who have expertise in particular areas, people who review a lot, more than their fair share of manuscripts and do a really good job of reviewing, people who help shape journal policy, and people who can act as ambassadors of the journal. So if you have a good publishing record already under your belt and you would like to engage with the journal, participate in the journal at this level, at the editorial board level, by all means, email me, send me your CV, and I will consider that, because editorial board members typically serve a 3-year term. That can be renewed. So there's going to be some turnover. You know, we're always going to want to have some sort of kind of fresh eyes on the editorial board. I don't want it to just be the same old people for decades. So if you're interested in serving at this level, just let me know. So I'll go back to about, and then the last thing I'm going to draw your attention to, here's all the journal policies and all that, the author guidelines. So if you are interested in writing a manuscript, submitting a manuscript to JMLA, this is where you find all the information about the types of articles that we publish, how long they're supposed to be, those kinds of things. And like I said, these are going to be changing soon. So within the next couple of weeks, hopefully, this page will be updated and provide current descriptions of the articles that we publish. So I'm going to hop out of this now and then start the question and answer period. So Martha, did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we do that?
No, although I have been monitoring the questions that have been
okay.
We do have one from Michelle, and she asks, isn't it possible for original research to be a case study? Qualitative research is oftentimes case study in methodology. And in part to that is, will the differences you are sharing be listed clearly on the JMLA page?
Yeah, there is. There's a gray area there. I admit there's a gray area there. A case study can definitely be a research method. But the case studies that are published in JMLA don't often employ the very formal kind of case study method. They're more of, just kind of like a description, a thorough description, with hopefully some sort of data that's involved with an assessment or evaluative data. But case studies, I think of case studies more as stories, a story of how librarians at your institution developed, a new course or something like that. So they tell a story. They normally don't perform some sort of statistical analyses or anything. So it's really kind of a story of how a new initiative was developed and implemented that just occurred within a single institution or through a single collaborative effort. It might be better. My building lost internet connection, like at the very worst possible time, so I'm calling on my cell phone.
Well, thanks for joining us again. We
okay.
appreciate it.
Do we still have some people?
We sure do.
Okay. Were there any other questions that I could answer?
Sure. We have one additional question, again from Michelle. Is there any way to include a pathway/suggestion to submit to hypothesis? If declined.
So if it's declined from JMLA to submit, maybe to have the manuscript and possibly the reviews go straight to hypothesis. That's how I'm understanding the potential pathway. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. We could probably work that out with hypothesis. I mean, me and the editors of Hypothesis have been in conversations about how to make the journals more complementary of each other. We don't want to compete for audience, really. We don't want to really be competitive. We want the journals to be to complement each other, and that would be an interesting way to do that. So I can talk about that with editors of Hypothesis and see if that could be feasible. That's a good idea.
An additional question from Jesse. What is your recommendation for detail regarding the methodology for qualitative studies? Some researchers include a lot of detail while others do not. We are looking to conduct a series of focus groups around information-seeking behavior of nurses.
More detail in the method section. More detail is always better than less detail. And it depends on the reviewers that you get. I mean, there is an element of chance, of the reviewers that you get. Are the reviewers going to be very well versed in qualitative analyses and would expect to see more detail, or maybe they don't know very much about qualitative analyses and don't really care about the methods, more just care about what you found. But generally speaking, more detail is better than less detail in the method section. And if you're running into like the word limit, the introduction can always be made more concise. The discussion section can often be made more concise. You might really want to focus your efforts on the methods and the results section.
That seems to wrap up our questions at this point, unless any additional come in.
Okay. You know what? I had forgotten to present my last slide. Would you be able to, about the developing a data policy, would you be able to show that slide? I don't know if I can do that with my phone.
Bear with us and we'll try and do that.
Okay.
Okay, I have it up right now, the JMLA Data Policy Development Working Group.
Yeah. So we are well aware of the move toward open science, research reproducibility, data sharing, and so we want to promote open, transparent research and data sharing, to promote research reproducibility. And so we are working on developing a data policy. We have a working group now composed of the individuals that you see on that slide. These are all JMLA editorial board members. So we are probably over the next year or so taking a really hard look at this question of what would a data policy look like, and we don't know yet. We don't know, are we going to require data sharing or just encourage it? what do we even mean by data? Where would we expect you to put your data? What about data with human subjects, where there might be issues about personal information? We are aware of these issues, and we know they have to be dealt with delicately. We don't want we want to promote data sharing, but we don't want it to be an onerous burden on the authors or the peer reviewers or the editorial team. So we want to develop a good data policy that's easy to comply with, reasonably easy to comply with, but that also kind of keeps JMLA on the forefront of encouraging research reproducibility and data sharing. So just know that we are working on this, and hopefully within the next year or so, we will be rolling out a data policy. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that.
No additional questions came in. We do want to make sure that everyone was able to see that last slide. So above the screen, there's a toolbar that has a number in the box. What you'll want to do is hit the right arrow so that you can see that last slide. But no additional questions at this point.
Okay.
Jesse just wrote in and said, love it. Thanks, Catherine. So if there are no additional questions, this can conclude our open forum. Catherine, I'll leave it to you for any last comments.
No last comments. Just, well, I guess just if you have any questions, if you want to follow up, if you have any questions that you didn't want to ask publicly but you want to ask me, you are welcome to contact me. If you have any, we'd love to see your submissions. We really do want you to submit your work. We want to hear about what you're doing, about what you're finding. We really want this journal to work for MLA members as well as the whole field of health sciences librarianship and information science. So we definitely welcome your submissions.
That concludes our open forum. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Okay, thank you.